Currently in the US, 50% of all homicides remain unsolved, and sadly, many will stay this way. But due to the improvements in modern technology, we are seeing more and more cold cases being solved. Families are finally receiving answers and closure for heinous crimes committed in years past. This video will explore the top 5 cold cases solved of 2025. Carl Matthew Bryant. For 53 years, a small gravestone in Alexandria, Virginia, bore a name that wasn't his own. Charles Lee Charlet, a name given by strangers to honor a child whose real identity had been lost to time and tragedy. But this isn't really the story of Charles Lee Charlet. This is the story of Carl Matthew Bryant and how modern science finally brought him home. June 13, 1972, Massey Creek in Lorton, Virginia. Under a quiet bridge, someone made a horrific discovery that would haunt investigators for decades. The body of a 4-year-old boy, beaten to death. No identification. No missing person reports. No leads. In an era before DNA testing, before forensic genealogy, before the digital tools that solve cases today, this little boy became one of thousands of Jane and John Does across America. But the community wouldn't let him be forgotten. A local church group stepped forward, giving him a name, Charles Lee Charlet, and ensuring he received a proper burial. Fast forward to 2024. Detective Melissa Wallace and her team at Fairfax County Police weren't ready to give up on their oldest cold case. To see the extent of that boy's injuries and what he had suffered through, we knew we had to keep trying. Technology had advanced. We had new tools. Using just a few millimeters of hair from the victim's body, forensic genealogists began building a family tree. DNA fragment by DNA fragment. Generation by generation. The trail led them 150 miles north to Philadelphia. Philadelphia family members told investigators about their deceased relative, Vera Bryant. In 1972, Vera had left Philadelphia with her boyfriend James Hedgepeth and her 2 young sons. She had a 4-year-old son who went missing during that trip to Virginia. His name was Carl Matthew Bryant. But there was more to this story. To confirm their theory, detectives took an unprecedented step. In July 2024, they exhumed Vera Bryant's remains to test for a maternal DNA match. The results were definitive. After 52 years, Charles Lee Charlet finally had his real name back. The investigation revealed that Vera Bryant and James Hedgepeth were responsible for Carl's death. But justice would never be served. Vera died in 1980. Hedgepeth, a man with a violent criminal history and a previous murder conviction, is also deceased. But the story doesn't end here. Carl had a 6-month-old brother, James Bryant, who also disappeared during that 1972 journey to Virginia. Detectives believe James met the same tragic fate as his brother. Somewhere along the route between Philadelphia and Massey Creek, another young victim may be waiting to be found, waiting to be brought home. Today, the gravestone will be changed. Charles Lee Charlet will become Carl Matthew Bryant. A small victory in a case filled with tragedy. For Carl Matthew Bryant, the mystery is solved. But for his baby brother James, the search continues. Because every victim deserves their name. Every family deserves answers. And sometimes even 53 years later, justice finds a way. 53 years later, no one left to be penalized. Would you call this justice? Let me know in the comments. Case 2. The murder of Phyllis Baylor, Indiana, early 1970s. What if I told you that a piece of clothing held the key to solving a 52-year-old murder? That DNA smaller than a grain of sand could finally bring justice to a family who waited over half a century for answers? This is the incredible story of how modern science solved one of Indiana's oldest cold cases. But you're not going to believe the twist at the end. July 7th, 1972. It's a warm Friday evening in Indianapolis. 26-year-old Phyllis Baylor is getting ready for what should be a simple weekend trip. She's packing up her car with her 3-year-old daughter for a drive to Bluffton, Indiana, about 100 miles northeast. They're going to visit Phyllis's parents. It's supposed to be a routine family visit. But here's the thing about routine trips. Sometimes they become anything but routine. Phyllis and her daughter never made it to Bluffton that night. And what happened next would haunt investigators for over 5 decades. When Phyllis and her daughter didn't arrive at her parents' house, the family knew something was wrong. This wasn't like Phyllis. She would have called. They contacted police to report them missing. The next morning, Saturday, July 8th, searchers made their first discovery. Phyllis's car, abandoned on a highway in Grant County with the hood up. No sign of Phyllis or her daughter. Now, if you're thinking this looks like a breakdown situation, you'd be partially right. But what happens next is what turns this from a roadside assistance call into every parent's worst nightmare. About an hour after finding the abandoned car, another driver was traveling through nearby Allen County when she spotted something in a roadside ditch. It was Phyllis and her 3-year-old daughter. The good news, if you can call it that, was that the little girl was alive and unharmed. The devastating news was that Phyllis Baylor was dead. The autopsy results revealed this wasn't just a tragic accident or even a simple robbery gone wrong. Phyllis had been shot and sexually assaulted. This was cold-blooded murder. Allen County Police and Indiana State Police launched a full investigation. But remember, this is 1972. No cell phones, no security cameras, no GPS tracking. And most importantly for this story, no DNA testing. Do you know what year DNA evidence was allowed? Let me know in the comments. The investigators did everything they could with 1970s technology. They followed leads, interviewed suspects, processed the crime scene. But without the scientific tools we have today, the case eventually went cold. But here's where this story gets really interesting, because the evidence was waiting. It was just waiting for technology to catch up. Years later, when DNA testing became available, investigators were able to extract a partial DNA profile from Phyllis's clothing. That partial profile actually eliminated their main suspect, proving that good detective work sometimes means ruling people out, not just in. But partial DNA profiles have limitations. Think of it like having half a fingerprint. It can exclude people, but it might not be enough to definitively identify someone. So the Indiana State Police cold case team kept working. And in 2024, they had a breakthrough using improved technology. They developed what they called a much stronger DNA profile from the same piece of clothing. This is where the story gets really cool from a science perspective. The cold case team took that DNA profile to Identifiers International, a forensic genealogy company in California. These genealogy experts don't just look for exact matches. They build entire family trees going back generations, looking for relatives of the unknown suspect. It's like detective work meets ancestry research. They're essentially saying, we don't know who you are, but we know your DNA signature, so let's find your cousins, your aunts, your great-grandparents, and work backwards. And in early 2025, just months ago, they found their answer. The DNA matched Fred Allen Lieneman. In 1972, he would have been 25 years old, just 1 year younger than Phyllis herself. Here's what's chilling about this case. Police say Phyllis and Lieneman had no known connection. This appears to have been a completely random attack. A young mother and her toddler driving to visit family became the victims of a stranger's violence. It's every family's worst fear. But the story of Fred Lieneman doesn't end in 1972. Investigators discovered he had a long criminal history, including, and this is important, a first-degree murder charge in May 1985. Now here comes the twist I mentioned at the beginning. After 52 years of investigation, after developing cutting-edge DNA evidence, after identifying their suspect, Fred Allen Lieneman was murdered in Detroit in 1985. The man who allegedly took Phyllis Baylor's life had his own life taken 13 years later. Justice in a way, but not the kind of justice that brings closure to a courtroom. If Lieneman were alive today, Indiana State Police say he would have been charged with Phyllis's murder and the case would have gone to trial. Instead, this case closes not with handcuffs but with answers. Sergeant Wes Rolander of the Indiana State Police put it perfectly when he said, Phyllis Baylor never made it to Bluffton to visit her family. After years of questions, this family finally has answers about what happened to her. And sometimes that's all we can hope for. Not justice in a courtroom, but truth. Not punishment for the perpetrator, but peace for the family. Phyllis's 3-year-old daughter, now in her 50s, finally knows what happened to her mother that night in 1972. The family that waited 52 years for phone calls that never came now has their answers. If you're liking this video, please like and subscribe for more. Case 3. The murder of Roseanne Sturtz, Maryland, 1975. This case shows how important every little detail can be in the homicide investigation process. In this case, the serial killer was shown the wrong picture, which unbelievably cost the victim's family 49 years before they could know the truth. August 24, 1975. Baltimore, Maryland. A woman known to her friends as Ann was out for what should have been a typical Saturday night at a local bar. Her real name was Roseanne Sturtz, and she had no idea she was about to encounter pure evil. Somewhere during that night out, Roseanne met a man who would become her killer. After leaving the bar together, they got into an argument that escalated into something unthinkable. Roseanne Sturtz was strangled to death. Her body was discovered, but her killer vanished into the night, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt Howard County Police for nearly half a century. For years, detectives followed every lead, interviewed countless suspects, and chased down tips that led nowhere. The case grew cold, joining thousands of other unsolved murders across America. But in 1981, 6 years after Roseanne's death, something interesting happened. Police had identified a convicted killer named Charles William Davis Jr., who was already behind bars at Jessup Correctional Institute. His pattern of victims seemed to match Roseanne's case perfectly. Detectives made Davis an offer he couldn't refuse, answer questions about the Roseanne Sturtz murder, and they wouldn't press charges in the case. Davis agreed to the interview, and everything was recorded on an audio cassette. There was just one problem with their plan. During that 1981 interview, investigators showed Davis a photograph of Roseanne Sturtz. They watched carefully as he studied the image, hoping for recognition, waiting for a confession. Davis looked at the photo and shook his head. He couldn't identify her as one of his victims. Case closed? Not quite. What police didn't realize was that they had shown Davis the wrong photograph, an image of Roseanne taken several years before her murder. She looked different, younger. The passage of time had changed her appearance enough that even her own killer didn't recognize her. For 44 years, that cassette tape sat in evidence storage, a missed opportunity gathering dust while Roseanne's family waited for answers. Late 2023. Howard County Police Corporal Wade Zufall decided to take another look at the Roseanne Sturtz case. Davis was still alive, still in prison, still serving life sentences for other murders. What if they tried again? Zufall arranged to bring the now elderly Davis from Jessup Correctional Institute back to police headquarters. Same killer, same questions, but this time with a crucial difference. Zufall had a different photograph of Roseanne, a headshot taken just 1 month before her murder. This image showed her as she actually appeared on the night she died. The moment Davis saw this photograph, everything changed. Police released footage from the interview showing Davis studying the photograph. Then, slowly, he began nodding his head. After 49 years, Charles William Davis Jr. finally identified Roseanne Sturtz as one of his victims. He admitted to strangling her after their argument at the bar escalated into violence. According to Corporal Zufall, Davis had a surprising reason for finally telling the truth. His main reason why he wanted to talk to me was he wanted to give closure to the family. In November 2024, nearly 5 decades after losing their loved one, Roseanne's family finally received the answers they had been praying for. In a statement released through police, they said, "We were grateful to have all the case details, learned Roseanne's actual date of death, and received the closure we have been praying for all these years." Davis cannot be charged with Roseanne's murder due to the 1981 agreement, but he's already serving life in prison for his other confirmed killings. Sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of new charges or courtroom victories. Sometimes it comes as truth, the simple, powerful act of finally knowing what happened to someone you loved. One photograph. 49 years. The difference between a cold case and closure was nothing more than showing the right picture at the right time. Charles Williams has 4 confirmed victims. How many more do you think there is that we don't know about? Let me know in the comments. Case 4. The woman in the chicken coop, Spain, 2018. Imagine dying thousands of miles from home, with no identification, no family to claim you, and no name on your gravestone. So you will have. For years, you're known only by haunting nicknames like the woman in the chicken coop, the woman with the flower tattoo, or the woman in the suitcase. This is the heartbreaking reality for dozens of women found dead across Europe over the past decades. But what if I told you that one of the world's most powerful police organizations has launched a revolutionary campaign to give these forgotten victims their names back? And it's working. Picture this. Scattered across 6 European countries, the bodies of women have been discovered in circumstances that would haunt any investigator. Some found in canals, others in abandoned buildings, some buried in remote locations where they might never have been found at all. These women became known by the places they were discovered or their most distinctive features. The woman in the canal, the woman with artificial nails, the woman in the suitcase. Names that describe their deaths, not their lives. For decades, they remained Jane Does, unidentified victims in case files, buried in unmarked graves or stored in morgues, while somewhere in the world, families wondered what happened to their missing daughters, sisters, and mothers. But in 2023, Interpol, the international police organization connecting 195 member countries, decided enough was enough. Interpol launched something unprecedented, the Identify Me campaign. This wasn't just another missing persons database or cold case initiative. This was a global crowdsourcing effort, asking the public worldwide to help identify over 40 women found dead across Europe. The campaign released carefully chosen details about each victim, photographs when possible, descriptions of clothing, jewelry, distinctive tattoos, even dental records. All shared publicly for the first time, hoping that someone, somewhere, would recognize a face, a scar, a piece of jewelry. The power of this approach? A missing person reported in Paraguay could be matched with a body found in Spain. A family in Asia could identify a victim discovered in Belgium. For the first time, the global nature of modern migration was being matched by truly global investigation methods. Want to see a video about another cold case? Let me know in the comments. And then came the breakthrough authorities were desperate for, November 2023. Rita Roberts, a British woman found murdered in Antwerp, Belgium in 1992, finally got her name back. For over 30 years, she had been another Jane Doe in the files. But when Interpol released images of her distinctive tattoo, family members recognized it immediately. Rita's identification proved the concept worked. But Interpol was about to achieve something even more remarkable, their first transcontinental success. Which brings us to a chicken coop in Girona, northeastern Spain, and a discovery that would span 2 continents. August 2018. Workers on a farm in Girona made a grim discovery that would puzzle investigators for years. A woman, approximately 33 years old, found hanged in what locals would later call the chicken coop incident. She carried no identification. No purse, no documents, no phone. The farm's inhabitants had never seen her before. Neighbors couldn't identify her. She was a complete mystery, a woman who had seemingly appeared from nowhere to die in a place where nobody knew her name. Spanish authorities tried everything. They checked missing person reports across Europe, ran her fingerprints through European databases, even released sketches hoping someone would come forward. Nothing worked. For years, she remained the woman in the chicken coop, case file number, not a name. But unknown to Spanish investigators, halfway around the world in Paraguay, someone was looking for her. In 2019, a year after the discovery in Spain, a man in Paraguay walked into a police station with a missing person report. His sister, Ainoha Izaga Ibieta Lima, had left Paraguay for Spain in 2013 and had gradually lost contact with family. At first, it seemed like another routine missing person case. People migrate, lose touch, start new lives. But this brother was persistent. He knew something was wrong. When Interpol launched the Identify Me campaign in 2023, Paraguayan authorities saw an opportunity. They had been building their own database of missing persons, including Hinoja's case with her fingerprints on file. In March 2025, nearly 7 years after the discovery in the chicken coop, forensic experts made the connection that would change everything. The fingerprints matched. After years of being known as the woman in the chicken coop, victim number 33 from Spain had a name: Hinoja Izaga Ibieta Lima. Interpol Secretary General Valdesi Urquiza called it historic, the first successful transcontinental identification in the campaign's history. A woman from Paraguay found in Spain, identified through international cooperation that spanned 2 continents. For Hinoja's family, it meant the end of years of wondering. No more hoping she might call, no more checking social media for signs of life. They had their answer, heartbreaking as it was. As Urquiza explained, this campaign is about restoring dignity to victims and giving a voice to those affected by tragedy. Hinoja was no longer a case file or a nickname based on where she died. She was a daughter, a sister, a person with a name and a story. But Hinoja's identification represents something much larger than one solved case. It proves that in our interconnected world, traditional borders don't have to limit justice or closure. Think about this. We live in an era of massive global migration. People move across continents for work, love, opportunity, or simply a fresh start. When tragedy strikes far from home, families often don't even know which country to contact for help. The Identify Me campaign changes that equation. It creates a global network where a missing person report in South America can solve a cold case in Europe, where a family's DNA in Asia might identify remains in Africa. But the work is far from over. 45 women in the Identify Me files still remain unidentified. 45 families still searching for answers. 45 graves that should have names instead of numbers. What makes this campaign so powerful isn't the technology or the international cooperation, though both are impressive. It's the fundamental human need to be remembered, to have your story told, to be more than just a statistic in a police file. Every time one of these women gets her name back, it's a victory not just for her family, but for human dignity itself. It says that no matter how far from home you be, no matter how long it takes, someone will fight to remember who you were. Interpol's campaign continues, with new cases added regularly and new success stories emerging. Each identification makes the next one more likely as the database grows and more families learn about this resource. Right now, there are 45 women whose families are still searching. Their photos, their descriptions, their stories are available through Interpol's Identify Me website. Maybe you'll recognize a piece of jewelry, a distinctive tattoo, or even a face that looks familiar. The woman with the flower tattoo could be someone's daughter. The woman with artificial nails might be someone's sister. The woman in the suitcase was once someone's little girl. Hinoja Izaga Ibieta Lima is no longer the woman in the chicken coop. She's a name on a gravestone, a closed case file, a family that finally has answers. And somewhere out there, 45 more families are still waiting for that same moment of closure. Case 5. The Captain Lost at Sea, New Jersey, 1844. Our last case is also our oldest, a maritime mystery that waited 181 years to be solved. Scattered bones on New Jersey beaches held the key to identifying a ship captain lost in one of the Atlantic's most violent storms. But it took determined college students to crack the case. For nearly 3 decades, skeletal remains washing up on New Jersey beaches puzzled investigators. The bones found between 1995 and 2013 belonged to someone police called Scattered Man John Doe. But these weren't just any bones. They belonged to someone from one of America's most tragic maritime disasters, December 1844. The schooner Oriental was carrying 60 tons of marble from Connecticut to Philadelphia when disaster struck off Brigantine Shoal. A massive storm overwhelmed the ship, sending all 5 crew members to their deaths. One body washed ashore and was decently buried, according to the Boston Daily Bee. The other 4 vanished into the Atlantic until decades later. In 2023, New Jersey State Police partnered with Ramapo College students specializing in genetic genealogy. These students uploaded DNA from the scattered remains to ancestry databases and began building family trees dating back to the 1600s. Every genetic match pointed to Connecticut. Every historical record led them closer to the truth. Then they discovered newspaper articles about the Oriental's tragic sinking. The evidence pointed to one man, Captain Henry Goodsell, age 29, who left behind a wife and 3 children. In April 2025, DNA from Goodsell's great-grandchild confirmed it. Scattered man John Doe finally had his name back after 181 years. Sometimes the most advanced technology helps us solve the oldest mysteries, proving that no one is truly forgotten when determined people refuse to give up. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support the channel.